So I've heard you speak about this before. So when the body dies, potentially a certain experience that the mind has within that body could continue and be reincarnated into another body, potentially. And I was just wondering, wouldn't that imply a sort of duality if an experience of a particular mind continues beyond death? How would that work with the non-dual understanding?
In what way do you feel that contradicts the consciousness-only model?
Because the experiences are individual and would continue to operate in some way separate to the body. And how would that merge with the consciousness-only model if there's a separate identity that can continue past death? If you know what I mean.
Well, the existence of a finite mind while we're alive doesn't imply the existence of a separate, individually existing entity, even while we're alive. And nor does it imply such when we die. Go back to the model I suggested to Ruthie earlier. A piece of white paper represents infinite consciousness. And each of our finite minds are just apparent localizations of that infinite consciousness, made appearing in that infinite consciousness, known by that infinite consciousness, made of that infinite consciousness. And if we were to represent them, there'd be little circles drawn with perforated lines. But the circles aren't... the part of the paper that's enclosed within the circle is not a discrete, independently existing entity. It's just the white paper. It's all just the one white paper. There are no real divisions anywhere. Mm-hmm. So there are no separate, individually existing entities or minds, even while we're alive. And then when we die, imagine those perforated circles just expanding. There's still no... There can still be a circle. There can still be the contents inside the circle and the contents outside the circle. But at no point is there any separate entity. So there's nothing to suggest that after, when we die, that the mind doesn't expand or unravel. But it can still have individual content within it that may be unique to that mind. But still... that mind doesn't have its own independent existence. It's just an apparent localization of the one infinite consciousness.
Do you think the individual soul is relevant in this model?
Well, the soul is just an old-fashioned word for the mind.
Right. Right.
And just comment on what you said about the mind being in the body and the body dying and the mind being remaining after death. That's not quite how I see it. I see the body, I understand the body in the same way that William Blake understood it. The body is that portion of the soul, or the mind. The body is that portion of the mind that is discernible to the five senses. In other words, when you close your eyes now, you don't experience yourself as a body. You experience yourself as a mixture of thinking, imagining, remembering, sensing, feeling, perceiving, and so on. But when I look at that bundle of mind from my perspective, through the lens of my sense perceptions, I don't see a bundle of thinking, feeling, sensing, and perceiving. I see a physical body. In other words, the physical body is what your mind looks like when it's perceived from the perspective of my sense perceptions. The body, your body, is that portion of your soul, that portion of your mind that is discernible to my five senses. Mm-hmm. So I don't really think there is a body and a mind. I think there's just consciousness. And that consciousness localizes or seems to localize itself as a finite mind. And that finite mind appears as a body from the perspective of another finite mind. So go back to the white paper with all the circles all over it, 8 billion of them, or 8 trillion if we include all the animals. Inside each circle, consciousness is, the one consciousness is still vibrating. Okay, let's elaborate the model. You go back to the white piece of paper, and then imagine the white paper starts vibrating spontaneously within itself. And the white paper, you imagine the white paper with ripples all over it. At some point, one of those ripples joins up, and it forms a circle, not just a line. So it seems to dissociate in Bernardo's language. A separate mind seems to appear made out of one of these ripples. So now we have a finite mind appearing in infinite consciousness. Now fast forward, you've got billions of finite minds. The vibrating white paper is still taking place inside the little circle. But that is now experienced as the internal subjective experience of the finite mind. In a human being, that's their thoughts and feelings. It's still the white paper rippling. It's still the movement, the activity of infinite consciousness. But inside a finite mind, it's experienced as thoughts and feelings. Now, when the finite mind looks out at the white paper is still rippling. So when it looks at another circle, inside the circle, it's rippling. It's all thinking, feeling, sensing, and perceiving. But when one circle looks at the other circle, it sees a body. In other words, when one circle looks at another localization of infinite consciousness, it sees that localization as a body. But what about all the rest? The unlocalized white paper, the rippling. What's that? It's the universe. So when we look out at the activity of consciousness, William Blake may have gone on. He said the body is that portion of the soul that is discernible to the five senses. He might have gone on to say, and the world is that portion of the activity of consciousness that is discernible to the five senses. So when we look out at the world, we look through the faculties of sense perception, and we see reality in a way that is consistent with our perceiving faculties. So we see reality as a physical world. It's not a physical world. Our sense faculty, our perceiving faculties just render the activity of infinite consciousness as a physical world. There's no physical world out there. There's no physical body there. It's all the activity of infinite consciousness. And so when a finite mind, when a body dies, bodies don't die. Bodies were never born. Bodies don't exist in the way they appear to. Bodies just appear to us. It's just an appearance. What's really there is the activity of infinite consciousness. So when a body seems to die, what really is happening is that the coherence of a finite mind, the little circle with perforated, is beginning to expand. It's beginning to lose its coherence, but it still expands. There's still something there that is circumscribed by a boundary. And that boundary, it may dissolve completely and just go back into the and merge with infinite consciousness, but it may not. There's nothing to suggest that a finite mind may unravel in the death process, but then may contract again. And if that contracted mind was viewed from the perspective of another finite mind, it might at one point appear as another body. That would be an upgraded theory of reincarnation.
And the unique contents that you were referring to, how is that relevant?
The unique...
You said that the individual experiences, the unique contents...
Go back to the white paper. It's rippling, it's vibrating within itself, it's rippling, and then the circles, the finite minds, are just little bounded portions of the rippling consciousness. So the content of each finite mind is slightly different, depending on the shape and the construction of the finite mind. But the internal experience of each finite mind is slightly different. And then as it expands, there can still be, as long as there is some kind of a boundary, there will still be internal subjective experience from the point of view of the finite mind. There'll be the finite mind's internal subjective experience, which for us now are thoughts and feelings, but they may change as the mind expands. Psychedelics give us a hint of what happens when the mind expands. And then we have external, and then we all have external experience. And the reason why our external, that there is consistency to our external experiences, because all the finite minds, all the 8 billion circles, they're all looking out at the same unlocalized white, the rippling of the white paper, that part of the white paper that is not localized. We're all looking at the same white paper. So surprise to surprise, we all see the same world. However, our internal experience, we can't see through each other's barrier. So whilst we all share the same world, we don't all share the same thoughts and feelings. But all of that is consistent with the consciousness-only model. It doesn't contradict it. It's a theory, not a completely accurate one. It's a very simplistic theory, but it's a model of experience that accounts for our experience. What is our experience? Our thoughts and feelings are private, but we experience a shared world. How can we account for this without contradicting the consciousness-only model? So it's a model of our real, ordinary, everyday experience that explains, in a very basic, simplistic way, that explains our ordinary, everyday experience in a way that is consistent with the consciousness-only model.
Yeah.
Whereas, of course, there are many different perspectives. That the prevailing materialist paradigm, of course, completely contradicts the consciousness-only model. So this is a model of reality, a model of experience that is consistent with the fundamental premise that we have here, which is, of course, the fundamental premise of all the great religious and spiritual traditions, namely that reality is one infinite, indivisible whole, and that we are that.
Yeah. Thank you.